Our previous video dealt with note and rest lengths. In other words, how much time do you want me to do something, or alternatively do absolutely nothing? But there's one more question that we need answered before we can be particularly musically useful, which is, if I'm doing something, exactly what note do you want me to play? How high or low should it be? Now this is called pitch in music, and our tool for notating it is called the stave, which is 5 lines, which should be as straight as I can make them. The fisheye of the GoPro lens is going to make my lines look even more curvy than they are, but I make no claim that they're going to be perfect anyway. So we have 5 lines fairly evenly spaced. Now this actually, if it comes pre-packaged, is called manuscript. So if you internet search manuscript paper, you can get templates and print out 5-line staves all ready for you. But as you see, you can do your own too. Now, to turn this into what we call a musical stave, I need to add something called a clef. Now, a clef tells us how to interpret these 5 lines. And the first clef we're going to use is called the treble cliff. Treble's a not such used word really outside of choir music. It means a high boy voice, a boy soprano. So treble is obviously going to deal with the high end of notes that we play on instruments or sing with our voices. So we're going to do a treble clef. Now, treble clef, like any clef, goes on the left-hand side of our page and starts every line of our music. And to make one, I just need to go a wee bit above the top line, and I draw a line at right angles all the way down, and it goes down a little bit further below the line, the bottom line of our stave here. And then I do a curved line from the top, which loops around and encloses in this little curl here the second line up on the stave is enclosed within that curve there. Okay, so I drew the straight line and then I went to the top of the line and just curved around and enclosed that second line. So that is called a treble clef. And now these 5 lines actually mean something, and we assign them to different notes of the alphabet. Our bottom line we call E. So if a note is sitting right on that line, it's an E. Our second line is G. Our third line is B. Our fourth line is D. And our 5th line is F. Now, what people often do to remember these, E, G, B, D, F, is to create an acronym. So create a sentence in which each word begins with the required letter. A very common and very old one is every good boy deserves fruit or deserves friends. But I've heard some better ones than that in my time. One of the best I've ever heard was by a student called Kawana. His one was, eventually good brothers deserve freedom. You could make up your own acronym. It can be inspiring like that. It can be risque. It can be absolutely anything that's going to help you remember that pattern of E, G, B, D, F as we go up our lines. But because we have our 5 lines, they are separated by 4 spaces. And we have note names for the spaces as well. The bottom one is F. The next one is A. The next one is C. And the final one is E. And people don't generally use an acronym for that because it spells a word, face. So on the spaces spells face. you'll see an alphabet start to emerge. Let's start from A on the alphabet. We go A on the space, move up to the line above it, the third line, B. Move up to the third space from the bottom, C. Move up to D on the line, E on the space, the fourth space, F on our top line. So it's logical that we could keep going actually above our top line, and I teach 4 notes. We can be above the top line to make a G. And then we can use some extra notes. I'm just going to extend my stave right to the end here. We can make a note on an extra line above the stave that's added just for that note. So that's going to be A, because that's where our musical alphabet ends. We only go A to G, there is no note H. We go back to A again. And then I can draw the ledger line again. I just use the word ledger line, which is the name for these extra lines that are written attached to their own individual notes. So that's a B, and that's above the first ledger line, and then our top note on 2 ledger lines is the note C. And that just follows the alphabet, F, G, A, B, C. Now, I quite like to use a story for these top 4 notes, and it goes like this. There's a little brother, and he comes up to a tree in the garden, and he sees his big brother right at the top of the tree. He calls up to his brother, "Gee, brother, that looks pretty high up there." Big brother's a bit of an encouraging fellow, and he says, "All good. She's all good. Come on up." So the little brother does start climbing up the tree. He gets a fair way up, and then he gets wobbly knees and says, But he actually manages to climb up, and the big brother hauls him up the last couple of branches, and then they stand together at the top of the tree, and big brother says, "See, I told you. No big deal." So that's a story just to remember. Above the treble clef stave, we've got G, A, B, C. Now we'll also learn 4 notes below the stave. So I'll just bob down a little bit here. We've got below the bottom line. Now we know that our bottom line is E, so below that is going to be D, because we're going to work in the reverse way. We worked up the alphabet as we rose, so as we descend down, we're going to go backwards in the alphabet. I'll add 1 ledger line underneath, and so that's the note C, and then I'll go below that same ledger line to make B, and finally I'll add 2 ledger lines in total to the stave to make the note of A. And those are the notes that I teach in beginner music theory, from the A below right up through the 5 lines and spaces to the C above. And a student of mine made up a story for this DCBA. It's actually based on the Bill and Ted's movies, Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey, I think, in this case. And it goes like this: "Dude, come on, bogus adventure." So there we have the treble stave. 5 lines, E, G, B, D, F. 4 spaces, F, A, C, E. The high 4 notes, G, A, B, C. And the bottom 4 notes, D, C, B, A.